What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Facade. I'm your host, Gavin J. Gallagher, and on this podcast, I explore the mental and emotional game often playing out subconsciously, both in your mind and the mind of everyone else in the real estate or property investment market. The key to success in this game is to master your mindset and behavior, to take control of your thoughts, your emotions, and most importantly, your ego. Welcome to the show. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode 236 to be precise. And this is the first of our new midweek guest interview episodes, as I discussed on Monday's short update episode. Now, before I tell you about this week's guest, I want to quickly remind you about my in-person meetup, which is this Saturday coming. As I'm recording this, it is the coming Saturday, and so the 1st of February happens to be the same day that Ireland are playing England in the rugby, and I believe our guest today is actually going to be in Dublin for that very reason. If you would like to join my accelerator to be mentored by me in investing, raising money, and building a portfolio, you also get the benefit of the community, and you get the benefit of accountability and a network and things like that. And so, guys, if that is of interest to you, please do check out the show notes below. I've put a link called Program Overview, which will take you straight through to a little bit of a video on that. Now, our guest today comes from the assisted living space. And what is that, I hear you ask? Well, if I was to use the term old folks' homes, that would create a very negative impression in the vast majority of people who have heard that term before. And if you have anybody who is elderly living in a place like that, then it may bring sort of sad or unpleasant memories, because some of them leave a lot to be, they're just not up to the standard that you would want for an elderly person. Now, that said, there lies the opportunity to completely reimagine the industry. And so Marcus Hodges, our guest this week, he works at a company called Birch Grove. And this company is in the senior living community space. And we're going to go and discuss their unique business model. And we're going to understand and learn about how they go about the development and the investment of assets in order to kind of build out these assets that house their communities. Now, if you look at the demographics surrounding the aging population in Ireland, England, most of the developing Western world, this is a major problem, and it's a growing problem. And so there lies a massive opportunity, a massive potential future market. It does have its challenges. Marcus is going to cover that today, but it is definitely an opportunity in the years ahead. So I would strongly urge you to listen up, take plenty of notes, and I bring you Marcus Hodges. Marcus Hodges, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, good afternoon, Gavin.
Marcus, it's great to have you here. I've said to you just before we hit record there, we have a lot of people in different parts of the world. A lot of people may not have heard of you or your company or anything like that. Why don't you just give us a little elevator pitch so that we can kind of kick this off with that at least out of the way?
Yeah, sure. So we're called Birch Grove, and we offer assisted living. So I always then jump in first when I'm talking to someone and say, that's not a care home. So I think that's how we really differentiate from others in the UK, or one of the main ways. So we're not a care home, but we really feel like we're helping look after those seniors sort of before they feel that need for care home. And our other major point of difference is that we're a rental model, which if you said there are people listening around the world, they're going to say, yeah, of course, that's normal. But still in the UK, renting at that stage in life, it can be a bit of a shock initially. So that's our point of difference.
Interesting. And like there's a lot to be said for this whole model, because if you look at the demographics of most Western societies nowadays, it's very much like that there's an older population and there's a smaller percentage of young people supporting them. Mm-hmm. And so as people get older, and also as medical interventions become more successful and better technology and stuff like that, people live longer. And so this is definitely going to be
a thing. Before we kick into all of that, I kind of thought let's turn back the clock a little bit to early in your career. Like, where did you begin your career? Like, say, leaving university or whatever.
So when I went off to university and did what most people do that aren't clever enough to do law or medicine, I'm like, do I want to be a PE teacher or do I do a business degree? So I really felt I was sort of that generation. Actually, the school that I was at, I think they were pretty much the only four options that seemed to be like advertised or promoted to us. So I did a business degree because pretty much that's what I was told I was always going to do. Someone said, "Oh, you'll go into sales." I think that was a polite way of saying these B and C grades aren't going to get you too far in many professions. And when I came straight out of university, I did what every sort of young aspiring person wanted to do. I started working in the cleaning industry. You don't set out to do that. But I worked for OCS doing project management and contract management, which was actually just like the most wonderful grounding. Actually getting up at 3, 4 in the morning, pricing out cleaning contracts, making sure cleaning staff turned to work. So I fell straight into this business development and operations world. And that's, so I'm the nerd and flop between doing sort of sales and out ops for most of my career.
And in terms of just to kind of understand that, when you say, so you get up at 3 in the morning, you're going to like office buildings and it's kind of the contract cleaning of like office floors and things like that. Is that what you're getting?
Yeah. It was when I first applied for the job. I think like a lot of people, I wasn't really too sure what it was. Right. And I think so we have that problem now. We read a lot of job descriptions and think, not really too sure what that is. But it turned out it was a business development role. And actually you went in there, priced up, and it really was exactly what you're picturing, the 5th floor of a tower block somewhere in London. You'd walk around, you had a very simple equation of how many people it would take to clean it over a certain amount of hours. And then if you won that contract, then you were in charge of actually implementing it as well. So you took care of it and made sure that it wasn't just that sales job of, yep, sign away, off you go, and then you bugger off and someone else has to deal with all the problems. I didn't know that was quite different at the time. I think since then, most jobs are sales and then someone else runs it. Yeah. And that really gave me a great insight. I do remember, let's be honest, I was only there, I think, 1.5 years because I was saving up money to go traveling. That was why I was doing this job. I was really fortunate that my mum and dad only lived about an hour south of London. So again, I could stay at home. I would say rent free, but they made me pay them a few quid, and rightly so.
Proper order.
But I still remember, like, once I'd saved up that money to go traveling and then handed my notice in, I remember my dad saying to me, bloody, I'll have no idea how you did that. And he was a hard worker, but still was like here in the front door, go every morning at 3:30 or so. So yeah, I'm really, really grateful. I've sort of many jobs like that, but at the time it was hard. But yeah, really appreciated being able to do it.
But I mean, doing that kind of thing, it definitely would have grounded you in hard work and discipline. Like you can't be out. I presume you can't be out late in the town, like meeting pals and stuff, if you have to be out of the door at 3 a.m.
Well, you can because you're in your early 20s.
Yeah, of course. I suppose,
so yeah, you have a go, but you quickly learn. But yeah, it was very grounding and stuff. But yeah, it certainly. So it taught me a lot of things, I suppose. It wasn't just that actually you need to turn up and that reliability of doing it, because also this is early 2000s. If you didn't turn up, someone would have bollocked you and fired you. There was no getting away with it for 3 months and having a performance management. So you had to step up and do that. But what it also taught me is that, and I suppose this may not be a good thing, but I was told then, and was told actually in another job later in my career, it's almost like to lie about my age, as in to pretend you're a bit older. Okay. Because it's actually, you can't go into some worlds, sit around a table, whether that's as a line manager or when you're actually negotiating stuff, and say, yeah, I'm 21, squeaky clean out of uni. Actually sort of told to blag that a bit as well. So yeah, put me in some. I got some. I mean, we could spend a whole hour with horror stories of things that I cocked up when I was there and things you had to get out of in terrible situations. But yeah, it was really good grounding. And so you travelled a bit, and what does that mean? Like Australia or something like that? Yeah, I did. I did a route that. I mean, I call it travelling. There was lots of other people did it. I think especially that era, you had a backpack, you stayed in hostels, but you went from Thailand. Australia was the main place I was heading to. I was desperate to go and see some Ashes overseas test there as well. So did that, and then sort of worked my way through New Zealand and gradually back home. And was really fortunate that when I came back, in fact, I was in Fiji. And I was already worried about coming back and not having any money, because I thought I'm going to spend every penny I've got. Like it was like a 6-month holiday, really. Right. I didn't want to come back. So I was like, right, I've saved up, I'll spend it. And I ended up picking up an email and applying for a job in a golf travel company whilst I was in Fiji. So I was quite lucky. I came back, had an interview within a couple of days, and then started.
Excellent, yeah. And would you recommend going off and traveling to the people who are listening who are nice and young?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I know there isn't a one size fits all, it's everyone else, but what I took so much, I was really pleased that I did it after university and then worked. So then by the time I went away, firstly, as I already alluded to, I had money in my pocket. So that meant that those days when others in the dormitory were getting up and having to spend a week apple picking just so they could go out for a beer a week later, I'd done that work back in the UK, and at the time the pound travelled a lot better. So that worked for me. But the greatest thing is that being in my early 20s then, I felt I could still mix with those that were straight out of school at 18, but also those sort of 30-year-old divorcees that you met as well. You could hang out with them. So you had a really good mix. And I appreciated so much not being at work. Now, I'd only done it for a year and a half, 2 years beforehand, but actually that was great. And I wonder if I had come straight out of school, if I come straight out of university, I'm not saying I would have been complacent about it, but I'm not too sure I would have got the joy from it and appreciated it as much.
I can relate to that because when I remember 3 years into university, I took a year out and I went and I worked with a big architectural practice, and I got a job working in it was a year long, and I was placed with all these guys, but some of the guys were in their 50s and 60s and stuff like that, and so at the time, decades older than me, and I can remember. I had not really had much interaction with people of that age, except maybe my parents and grandparents and stuff. And suddenly, you realize that all these guys, there's a banter. There's kind of they also have their little rows and things like that. And it was a real eye opener for me that adults don't just have it figured out. It's very similar to everybody, all and up and down the age range.
Absolutely. I had one. It was a job, but it's not on my CV. I don't make part of my career. But when I first left uni, I went off and installed fiber optic cables on a NATO army base in Germany for a few months. And this was a job that I had chatting to a mate at uni in a bar saying, I don't want to get a proper job straight away. What can we do? And his uncle was an electrician or ran an electrical company. And that was much like the TV program Auf Wiedersehen Pair. I lived that lifestyle for a few months and it was awesome. But everything that you just said there, I was the youngest guy, left uni thinking I'm not saying knew it all, but felt quite confident in myself. You then walk into that environment where it's up to the age of 65 and you very quickly brought down to earth. Yeah, that was great. They were great times.
Yeah. So take us then, I mean, from a sales and business development role into, you came back to the golfing and stuff. Like when did real estate and, property development and stuff start to kind of creep into the career?
Yeah, it was at the end of my time at Hertz, which again I'm hugely grateful for, because that's where I moved from doing business development. I was an account manager, corporate account manager for Hertz. Then I moved into ops there because I got some really good advice from the fleet director there one day. Moved into ops and was like, actually, this is far better than sales. Like for me, this really worked. It's where I actually really think that's where my
strengths are.
Cheesy, but yeah, I think my sort of career accelerated a bit then actually. And I've been at Hertz between 5 and 6 years. And I just sort of knew I was ready to go. And I was having a chat with the MD there, who was, again, a wonderful chap. And he very politely said to me, there's more to the world than Hertz. And I applied for a job. In fact, no, I got a phone call from a recruitment company for student accommodation. I had no idea, like, what on earth can that be? I've been to university. How can someone run this? It's a shambles. But for that private sector, and it was a real sliding doors moment. Like everything worked out from there. Every interview, the timing of it, the locations, and then moved into that real estate world and student accommodation. And joining Unite Students at the beginning of,
okay. I was wondering which group.
Yeah, it was Unite Students, January 2014, and don't think I could have chosen a better time and a better company to join. That was absolutely wonderful. And that's when, again, another moment I was like, yeah, this is great. Running property in this world, it really pays off.
That timing is interesting because it was around about that time that I was leaving the UK. I was living in London for a while and I left to come back to Ireland because the economy was starting to start firing up again after the disaster after 2008. And I was coming back very much with the student accommodation model in my mind, because it was well developed in the UK, but there was nothing going on in Ireland in that regard. And so I saw this inward, this opportunity to go back in and actually try to kind of build something a little bit like United, obviously on a smaller scale. And that was the idea. But and so that's interesting. Student accommodation was a real. It was became an asset class of its own, whereas prior to that, it would have been considered like, Nobody really wants to deal with students and all that. But all of a sudden, after 2008, people saw that all of these other, asset classes had gone down in revenue during 2008, 9, 10 and whatever, whereas student housing was like 97, 98% occupied for the entire duration of the recession. And in fact, it was probably even better because a lot of people decided to go back to university that had been working prior to 2008.
Yeah, and they also opened up with a lot more international students coming in as well. But that's what I said. I was so fortunate, like joining Unite at that time, because it was just before their 25th anniversary. So let's say I'm there between 20 and 25 years. When I joined, my first few months there was still blue suit, shirt. I'm not too sure if we were wearing a tie or not, but it certainly was that era. But there was this very open conversation that we are moving. I say we, the hierarchy there, the CEO, Mark Allen at the time. So we're moving away from being a property business, and we're going to really focus on being an operator. And I was showed numbers of previous years as an operating part of the business. United Students hadn't made money before, or it had, I think, in the couple of years before there. And then suddenly that dial just massively swung and was making, tens, hundreds of millions every year. So I wasn't aware at the time when I joined there that what was actually happening with the tax. It's like, right, really focus on sales. It's like as a area manager as I was then, the whole senior team, everything was about sales. And then when we felt like we were really nailing that, everything was about customer service. And then it moved on to, employee engagement and cost control. And we went through these, like every year we were focusing more and more to grow. And then to be part of that. And so I would always speak really, really fondly of Unite as a company, not only because they gave me so many opportunities, but actually for a group of relatively young, senior mid-managers there. They put so much time into us, attention, training, and actually responsibility. Like, it's bloody scary at times, but then coming out of it, I'm forever grateful of the 4 years there.
And so, what was the next step after that?
The next step after that, I made, again, like hindsight and stuff. One thing, I made what turned out to be a really, really good decision, but all for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
So I'm probably overusing this word fortunate. I think I was again. I left Unite, if I could sum it up, because I was impatient. And probably thought, hey, I'm ready for that next step now. Come on, this must happen. Out of a company out of about 1,300 people then at the time, I'm sure there's quite a few thinking that. Excuse me. So I then moved to IQ student accommodation. For those that work in the sector, and for those if you were to be a student living, there isn't a huge amount of difference between like the mid tier ones, the mid market ones, Unite and IQ. But it was amazing how very different it was. Like, different logo, but pretty much you could spot them on the outside of the building, but how different it was behind the scenes. But I joined there at a hugely exciting time because they just acquired another portfolio. And grew from, mid-teen 1,000 beds actually, I think, up to sort of about 24, give or think about 24,000 beds. So I joined then in a head of operations role. Really with that one aim. Again, it wasn't a secret. It was discussed at the time that they said, right, we're either going to float or sell, and who wants to be part of that journey? So again, it was very hard work, but yeah, paid off, and it was another great experience.
And so we're moving through the student housing kind of sector, but ultimately you're going to end up in the assisted living sector.
Yeah.
What was that transition? I mean, was this a strategic sort of decision on your behalf, or was it just more of a job opportunity that popped up?
It was a bit of both. Some out of necessity, and then thankfully a bit of strategy as well. When I decided to leave IQ, I was sort of seeing what was available. Literally, not even say quite waiting by the phone, but just sort of if a great opportunity comes up, it will. I then had an incredibly disruptive 6 months at the Collective, which you may have heard of.
I know, resident merchant and stuff. Yeah.
So 6 months there. I joined within 6 weeks. Reza, who was CEO, was moved aside to a chairman role, and everybody started calling their money back in. I think that's a nice summary of it. And very quickly the door opened and everyone was leaving. 6 months later, there was Jay, the CFO, and I think were the last two of the senior members left, and Andy from who was our CTO. We were left, and then the doors were locked. That was the first time in my life where I thought, shit, things haven't worked out here.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I was being cocky about it before, but I always thought until that last minute, I thought it'll be all right. Someone's going to come in, because actually co-living is awesome. I really believe in it. I believe what it offers and what it offers society, which is part of why I moved into the senior living. But actually, it does work as a standalone operating business. So I thought this is going to work. Like, on paper, each asset makes a ton load of money. And then suddenly it didn't. I was like, oh shit, I don't have a
You know,
job.
it's funny you say that because it's what's really interesting about this conversation, Marcus, is that so I did exactly the same. I moved back to Ireland around with the student housing idea, and then as I was looking at student housing, I was I noticed that the universities, they were all reluctant to kind of let you into their grounds. They wanted to keep control of the actual student housing, and so it was only sites that were kind of independently located that were. So I started saying, what about co-living as a concept? And so started looking at co-living, and I came up with this whole concept for a co-living thing inside a university. And it was a great idea. It was received really, really well. But in the end, it proved difficult to kind of get funding for and stuff like that. But
Is that because it was different though? Is it because
it
when
was
something's so
because it was,
nascent, someone's
yeah,
like, oh, well, I'd rather invest here where it's secure.
exactly. That was it. It was the idea was that it was kind of a combination of co-living and student inside of a university. You know, the universities have these innovation labs where they kind of do kind of tech kind of stuff and startups and all that. So the idea was to co-locate this in that, so that and the idea was based on a US sort of concept. And there's a place called the Lassonde Foundation in I think it's in I can't remember the city that it's in, but Lassonde is a big thing in the US, and you live in the place, but then there's this big co-working place on the ground floor, and so the sort of the in-house residents are entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs with startups, and then they go downstairs and they work on the stuff, and so you're burning the midnight oil, and you're in this kind of engine room of activity. And I thought this is a great model. Bring this into a university thing here. The problem is that again, the university wanted to control the asset, and I was saying no, but that's how I make this a property opportunity, is by us having the asset and operating it. So in the end that didn't work out, but it had me right in the middle of all the co-working stuff, and I started studying the collective as a kind of a comparison. And I can remember absolutely loving the collective as an idea, and then being kind of surprised when I suddenly saw that it wasn't working anymore, because the old Oak Road and all that kind of stuff, that was really like far out, like well advanced. And then I can remember it was a little bit like the whole WeWork thing. And I mean, from the outside, my perception looking in was that Reza was a little bit like Adam Newman, and it was kind of like he's got great ideas and he's doing all this, but they're spending so much money on all of this stuff that it's kind of like throwing money into a furnace, like we got to grow, and it actually wasn't working when the funding model ran out, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a great summary. I mean, I probably have a lot more to add to that. What it made me quite skeptical about is when the collective, and it's really sad, when a business goes into administration, like thankfully everybody that lived there was fine. That just continued. A third party operator was put in by the administrators. All of my team, like the people that work on site, they all retain their jobs. That's great. But still, a lot of people lost their jobs. And it was brutal because I found it tough, but also there's a lot of younger people that certainly were living, say paycheck to paycheck. But I became really skeptical because then these articles started being published, like, the collective's gone under. And I was reading about it all going, that's just bull. Like, none of those reasons are correct.
Paper doesn't refuse ink. That's the problem.
Yeah, and I suppose everybody wants a certain narrative to it. But yeah, that was really sad. So when that went under, I then had, and it was quite flattering. I got a lot of phone calls from recruiters straight away. But they were rubbernecking. They wanted to hear about the car crash at the collective. I will be honest enough to know not everybody was rushing to come and employ me on like day one of it. Everyone wanted to hear the story. And I had a couple of opportunities straight away to move back into student accommodation. And I don't know why, but I just decided if you work for the biggest, and in my opinion, just opinion at the time, the best in United Students, and then I worked for IQ, which was really, really growing. I was like, I don't really want to
step sideways,
do that again and build it up. So I had the option of either sitting around doing nothing, which really wasn't much of an option because I've got a family to support and mortgage to pay. I'd take a job that I don't want to do, which again, that's not ideal, is it? And then it was a friend of mine who actually was asking, he's a real estate lawyer. He was asking me just for some not information, so just discussing something. He was working on a profit. And he just said, oh, you should be monetizing this because you've done it. And I was like, well, of course. So I just made that decision. Actually, can I earn enough money to get by whilst looking for that perfect job? So I set up on my own as a consultant, doing that like many other people have done before, across residential real estate. and I thought, there was something I could offer here. What I really struggled with was working out what it was. I knew if I had a conversation with someone, I could jump in and say, yeah, I've done that, I can help. But what was that, the equivalent of my elevator pitch? So I spent a couple of days, actually. My wife was in the office at home. I was in my daughter's playroom. She was at school. And I was surrounded by paper and highlighters. It almost looked like I was trying to make a movie. It was a bit over the top, and Post-it notes on the wall. And in the end, I was like, yes, I've got it. But I managed to sum it up. It was about 3 paragraphs long. All this work, and it comes to a couple of lines. So I made a couple of phone calls. And actually, one of the first phone calls I made, I say to people it was the first, but it was definitely the first 2 or 3. Someone went, yep, there's something I need you to do. So I was like, well, this is easy, isn't it? Turns out it wasn't that easy for a while. But I did that. But I didn't have an ambition with it. It wasn't like I want to have X amount of people working with me. I didn't even, by purposely said to myself, don't put a monetary value on this. It was like, earn money to get by and make it as successful as I can, so that when a job offer comes along, I have a really tough decision to make.
That's great. Yeah.
And I then, I'm sure like a lot of people, outwardly I was telling everybody this was wonderful. I'd drop my daughter at school, I'd go for a swim, I'd then do a whole day's work in that. And I was really regimented. I was always cold calling, LinkedIn, trying to made myself network for the first time in my life. And I was doing all right for it. And then it got to the September of that year, about 9 months, and I was actually away with some friends for a short break. And they were saying, Hodgie, things sounds like they're going really well. Well done, you. And I just went, I don't like it. I'm not enjoying myself. They're like, really? You seem to pretend you are. I was like, I'm lonely. I just knew I didn't really like it. It didn't really change. I mean, it still made, I think that's when I realized actually if the right job comes along, but I was still going to make sure that I took the right job and didn't end up doing something that I didn't like. And then Birch Grove came along.
Clarity is key, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like sometimes you got to do a shitty job to realize that's definitely what I do not want to do.
Absolutely, yeah. I've been, again, really lucky. Most of the jobs, met good people, made friends, laughed a lot, put a lot of value on that and having a good time. Only a couple of times I thought, do you know what? This just isn't quite the right world for me. So I really wanted to be sure with that.
So tell us about Birch Grove.
Yeah, so then I met Honor Barrett, who's our CEO. I'm sure for a lot of people listening to this, if they haven't seen her, they've definitely heard her. She is a force of nature and a very colourful one in many ways, and is hugely passionate. So when I first got a call about going to work for Birch Grove, I listened to the recruiter and I said, thanks, but no thanks. However, I do this consultancy stuff, and that was excuse me, that was my angle to get in. Put the phone down. Within half an hour, the recruiter phoned back and said, "Would you mind having a chat with my boss?" He then pitched the same job for me, and it was actually the best sales thing. Exactly the same job in a completely different way. He listened to what I was looking for and gave those answers. So I googled Birch Grove, like senior living, and I had been trying to get some consultancy work with them. I then listened to a podcast with Honor being interviewed, which is probably one of the reasons why I'm sort of stepping outside the comfort zone and doing this. Like really the power of recruitment, actually, of hearing that. I listened to that and I thought, yeah, this is someone I'd like to work for. I think I can learn here. This huge amount of passion. So then went along to meet Honor. We've just completed, actually. I've been there 2 years. And we've just completed our second annual roadshow where Honor and I go and meet all the staff and do various presentations. And within that, Honor actually asked me, she joined Birch Grove and so she set up Birch Grove because she believed in what it was, this rental for seniors, very passionate. Whereas I just have to admit, I didn't do that. I didn't join because I'm a nice person. I don't think I am, but I didn't go, I want to save the seniors. I joined because you alluded to it earlier on in our chat. More and more people are aging. So it's nearly 20% of the UK population are over 65.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, right, so I've done student, I've done co-living. This is pretty much the same thing. It's rental for older people. This demographic's only growing. There's a huge amount of potential here. So I met a lady who I thought would really click with. I thought this could be a great boss for me. I remember actually asking her at the end of our interview, which she tells everybody, she's like, our interview lasted 3 hours because he didn't shut up. But this is my opportunity for her not to interrupt me and say it was definitely a two-way conversation. Both of us went off on our sort of radio form for that. But I said to her at the end, like, what would I really get working for you or learn from you? And she was like, I never say no for an answer. I just don't give up. So you'll be, that's what I can teach you. So I went away and then thought, did my due diligence, because having learned that in previous places, like better be a bit careful now. And then joined. And I must say, after it took me, I would say a few weeks, some may say a bit longer, to actually then sort of fall in love with this rental market for seniors, like for actually to get the glassy eye moments when the emotions kick in. But to start with, I joined it because I thought I've got a skill set that they need, and this is a market that's only going somewhere.
So that's a great segue into the sector itself. I mean, in terms of somebody that, like, first of all, if you can explain the business model. Do you buy land and develop it, or do you buy property assets that have been built already and sold to you, and then you rent them out? If you can just kind of go into
It's a bit of both now. So originally the first 3 developments, so we call them neighbourhoods. So if I start referring to neighbours, they're the people that live with us, and neighbourhoods are the communities that we do in. So I may slip into that. So which can be quite confusing when we have like different language internally and externally. So the first 3 neighbourhoods, they were, land was acquired by Bridges, who are the company backing Birch Grove. Land acquired, contractor appointed, managed all the way through, and then operating it. We've just opened last week, actually, our 5th neighbourhood opened, which is in Godalming. And again, that's a very similar model. But in between that 3rd and the 5th one, we have a property in North London in Mill Hill East, which is absolutely gorgeous. And that was a property that was built by Barratt's. And we actually acquired it under a year before opening, about 9 months before opening, actually. So that was different. That was taking a building that was already going up, looking at, and so we were able to make a few tweaks to the design, not hugely. The frame and the structure still there. It's little things like access to showers and things like that. So that we bought, so therefore didn't have to have all the risk of construction, which, as I'm sure most of your conversations every day are probably around something to do with that. So our business plan, our model has changed slightly. So although we still have property in Leatherhead, again, just in Surrey, that's opening spring next year. That's again the original model: buy the land, build it, construct it. We have Hampton Court, which is the same, and then Banson and Chiswick, the same. But at the moment, we are really on our development directors. We're being sent out to find these similar to the Barratt's model that we did, because obviously there's a lot less risk to that there. But also, but also we can grow really quickly. Like, it's bloody hard work growing quickly. In fact, you can't really grow quickly because we have between 50 and 78 apartments in each. So that's going to take a long time for us to.
Every construction project is a year and a half or something, and there's only so many that you can manage at any one time before it starts to get unwieldy. So whereas you can go and buy 10 properties in that same time period.
Yeah, and it gives its leasing challenges, it gives its operational challenges to it, but at least then you go, right, we've opened, and it's far easier to open on budget, and we can grow really quickly. So that's the model that we're looking at now.
And can you describe what a neighbourhood looks like in terms of, let's start with the land model where you're developing. Is it houses, or it's an apartment building type thing?
They're apartment buildings. So one, and everyone who works with us will say, well, what's your favourite? And I'll look at it from a slight operational way rather than, I don't pretend I've got a great eye for transforming bricks into beauty and stuff. I'm far more operational. So some, and one in particular, is that sort of traditional L shape, which is wonderful for all aspects, all part of the operational world. But it isn't one that there's not going to be a calendar made of it. But inside, it is beautiful. Then we have others. The one that's just opening in Godalming, for example, is an old market town. It's on a slightly raised hill, looking down across the valley. You can actually looking down the cobbled high street, river, hills in the background. And that is, with a roof terrace, that is absolutely beautiful. So we do have a real mix. But once you go inside, that's where, and I'm going to contradict myself here, is where sort of the consistency starts, but it's pretty inconsistent. So the wonderful thing, we don't have to be that consistent with our brand, because nobody is going to, or very few people, apart from staff, are going to go to one neighbourhood and then go to another. It's not like going to one Marriott hotel and another Marriott hotel.
Yeah.
But there is a certain look and feel about it. So we have absolutely removed that beigeness, that brownness. And I sort of urge, and I'm sure you probably have already going to sort of look on the website, and you will see bright colours, pink flamingos, greens, like wonderful sort of coloured and textured wallpaper. So when you walk in that door, you're not hit with sticky brown beige plasticky chairs.
It doesn't feel like a hospital kind of.
Not at all. And that's one of the most lovely things we hear. It's why I'm every now and then a conversation comes, so why don't you guys offer care? Because we haven't, like, mum's moving out now at 90 because she's had 3 or 4 happy years here, and now she's having to go to a care home. And actually, one of our USPs is that we're not a care home. So when we hear people walking through the door and they see a thriving restaurant and they look at a bar and they can hear a bit of buzz, and you hear people going, "Oh, bloody, there's a bar here," and they actually hear people saying, "Oh, it's not an old people's home,"
Yeah.
because of that thing. And that's why you said there'll be others listening from around the world that we're going, "Yep, of course, that's obvious, we know that," but in the UK we don't. It still scares people away because I have this image of what it looks like.
Yeah,
So,
it's my one of my relatives has recently gone into a nursing home, and it's funny, she's perfectly happy in it, but all of her relatives that go to visit her feel terrible going in to visit her because they kind of feel like it's an awful environment and stuff like that, and just. It's not maybe a great place. It's not, the way you say your environment is very important, and the person, the 5 people you spend most time with, very much impacts your life. And if you're in a place like that, then you're going to kind of get a mindset that's kind of like that. Yeah. So that's where,
and that's what we're desperate to move everyone away from. Where we could do with more competitions, people don't think like that, and then that's why it's so lovely. We're always hosting someone, whether it's a real estate law firm or investors or journalists. It's like, come down, have lunch cooked by one of our own chefs, not a meal that goes ping off a menu that changes all the time. You said there's something that I'm actually going to steal. You said how important it is to have those sort of those five people around you. So and this makes very operational challenging, we sort of flood our neighborhoods with staff. It's because there are some days when people wake up and they're just having a shitty day. It could be the anniversary of their husband passing. It could be that they just really ache that day. There's just something horrible has happened. It could be as simple as, they didn't get a chance to speak to their daughter before they go in. And what they need then is just someone to make them a brew, sit downstairs in a coffee shop and actually have a conversation with them. So I can't run my neighborhoods with only 1 or 2 members of staff. So we have to be able to give that time. And it makes such a difference. So every survey that we do, every time I go into our neighborhoods, which I try and go to. When I first joined, I was like, right, I'm going to go to the 3 that open. I'm going to one of them every week. And then suddenly you realise that actually you don't do any work and you can't. But if I go at least once a week, and as soon as I go in, someone will say, grab me, literally very tactile, take you by the arm to tell you how amazing the staff are. So yeah, that's pretty special.
And in terms of what would you say is your ideal client in terms of an age sort of profile?
I think the ideal is probably different to the average as for what we've actually got. So the average age of someone that lives with us is 83.
Average.
Yeah. So, and we'd love to have people moving in earlier than that. I think a bit of affordability comes down to that as well, though. There's a time in someone's life when they're going to consider us. Now, everybody's different, and we shouldn't, and we actually can't stereotype. But something we do hear from those that move in with us is just like, oh, I wish I'd done it earlier. Because it's not a move that many people want to make. And that's a really hard thing to sell.
Yeah.
Like no one's going, oh yeah, I really want to do that, because the competition is actually the home that they're living in. So if they currently live in a lovely 3-bedroom home that they're brought their family up with, almost we can't compete with that. Like a 2-bedroom apartment, yes, it's lovely and it's shiny, but if you're coming from that, it's hard. So they're waiting. Normally it's something happens that triggers that. And it could be someone passing away. More often than not, it's loneliness. It could be, this is a real example of that person that woke up that morning, terrible storm, and the gutters have come down off the side of the house, the shed's collapsing in the garden, and they've just sort of sod this. I can't run this anymore. Yeah, the staircase hassle, and that's what pushes someone to us. And normally, well, not normally, occasionally people come in and we think, oh God, I wish you'd come here a couple of years ago. You would have loved it. It would have thrived a bit more. So yeah, that seems like the average person, but we are more ladies than men. I'm not too sure what that says, but as you know, the demographic, the population trends show that as well. Yeah. One statistic I find really interesting is that 30% of people who live with us don't have children.
Okay, at all.
Yeah. So and yeah, that will be slightly more than society. Again, so if we take someone, maybe they've been single their whole life, maybe their spouse has died, but they're sitting in a house, and the areas that we build in, there's quite asset rich. But if they're in a house value of 600-700 grand, they want to control their years now. So actually free up that equity and pretty much do what they want with it. And yeah, if you turn up and see someone walking out the door with their suitcases, another holiday, off I go. So there are a lot of people, but also we are then there for them. And it's really, really tricky for our staff, really tricky for my team to say, be friendly, like you're there today, and you have to give so much emotional support, literally a shoulder to cry on, but without crossing that line.
It's the EQ is the important thing in that situation, knowing like somebody needs a bit of help, you know.
It is, and that's why, and it was so interesting doing the road shows the last week. That's when you can actually remind people, and I get to hear them as well. The guys on the front line, it's not easy. Like they have some challenging people. They have challenging situations. They will have heartbreak quite regularly, because I think there's only two ways that it ends when someone lives with us. They either go into a care or they die. So we've got members of staff that will spend all this time, and then there's someone who they've been very close to for 3 years, then deteriorates and dies. So you have to deal with that. But they have so many moments of joy, and they make a difference to so many people's lives. And we all have to be reminded of that. Otherwise, it would just be really tough.
And in terms of like assisted living, the term, what does that mean? Does it mean that you have, you know, medical facilities kind of at hand, or how does it look for a person in their 80s coming in to live with you?
Cool. So it looks like a beautiful build-to-rent scheme. There is nothing medical around. You wouldn't know it, apart from the age of the people that live there.
Yeah.
I had a quote from a chap that lived with us, or lives with us still, and he said that he tells his friends that he lives on a land-based cruise ship. He said, and there's help there if I need it. And I was like, that's awesome. I'm stealing that.
That's cool,
yeah. So you wouldn't know. There's no hospital wall. There's no, like, we are not licensed to provide care. But what we can do is signpost it. So we have currently, it's 22% of the people that live with us have some sort of extra care. Now that could be as little as once a week, someone comes in to help wash their hair, maybe do some other sort of more personal tasks. And then we do have people that have someone coming in 2 or 3 times a day. But it is signposted. We don't get involved in it.
So so it's up to them to organise their own. You guys aren't providing it as an overarching kind of service, or
no, we don't. We don't get involved in the finance of it at all. But because we are, you know, experts of it, if someone moves in and they're absolutely fine, and then I don't know, they've had a hip operation, they need a bit of help, they can say to us, "Who would you recommend?" And there will be the same 2 or 3. And it's really good to have those relationships, because you always, like, the care providers need us and we need them. So we're able to say, these are the 2 or 3 that we'd recommend you speak to.
Yeah.
And then we leave it. And that's when it works really beautifully, because if there's somebody in the building and then they take on someone else, you can have, so we know all of those external care providers that come in. It's the same people that come in every day, every time, look after the same people. So yeah, so within our neighborhoods, there would be sort of nothing to sort of look at it and say, right, that is seniors. And that's really tricky, because the language that we use, like, we're still not sure of it ourselves as a sector. Like assisted living, there's independent living, the senior living, like there's so many different words, and none of them are particularly attractive. I suppose it's a bit like we said co-living, like what's co-living? It's just built to rent in small homes. So yeah, it is tricky. And we also have to be, there are some that say, well, I don't want to be assisted. But then operationally, that's so challenging for our guys as well. So the team on the front, they've got someone may move in and they're absolutely fine. And they're thinking, oh, there's, you know, people here that are deteriorating, and why am I not? I don't want that help. A few months later, they need that help, and that sort of cycle changes. So again, really, really tricky for our team on site.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then in terms of the pitch that you'd be making to an elderly person, that is, I mean, somebody like in my own case, so my own mother is, you know, in her late 70s, and she's downsizing from the house that I grew up in into a bungalow, because, you know, the stairs is a bit of a problem for her knees and things like that. But she was absolutely adamant, like, never moving into a nursing home, want to have my own stuff. And it's similar to what you've been explaining. But from the point of view of somebody, like, if you were to compare renting just an apartment versus moving into one of your schemes versus a care home, what are the kind of price differentials there? I mean, because obviously you're operationally, you have to cover the cost of all of your staffing and stuff, so it's going to be more expensive to rent. But what does it look like in terms of percentages?
So before I answer on the finance bit, something you said there, and you're sort of quoting your mum, and I'm sure she was here, she'd probably tell you that you've quoted her incorrectly. But she said she wants to move in with her own stuff. So that's really important for us. When somebody moves into one of our apartments, they bring all their own furniture with them, or they buy new stuff and deck it out. Okay. We're not fully furnished. When I first met Honor and walked around the Birch Grove, I did ask that and say, why not? And she said, well, people are moving from their home into their home. They want this to be the home. They want to bring with them the big oak dresser or the grandfather clock or their comfiest armchairs. And then when they do, it feels at home. So actually, yes, someone said it does bring it in. But you're right, of those three categories, you obviously have care home, which will, broadly speaking, is going to cost more to live in them for the weekly rent because there is that care provided. Anybody could just move into a build to rent scheme where at most there may be someone on the front door occasionally. If you had a maintenance problem, you have to log it, you call it, someone comes out, but you're in your own apartment. So what we have is that 24-hour, if you like, call if it's someone needed. So it falls between. So we have a maintenance operative, but we call them a handyman because no one wants a maintenance operative in their house, but you're quite happy to have a handyman in. Yeah. So externally we recruit for maintenance operatives, and when they join, they become handymen because the handyman and our cleaners as well. So our domestic team, we offer an hour a week of cleaning behind the apartment door.
Right.
And they can choose what they want with that. More often than not, it's changing of beds. Actually, I'd love someone to do that for me. That's the that's the pain in the arse stuff. So, but that or the cleaning, but really whatever they want for that hour. And it's our cleaners and our handymen that they're the ones that have that interaction most of the time. They're the ones that actually have that face-to-face or privately. So if someone does want a picture put up, or they do want help, or their telephone isn't working, they got someone to call for it. So we do fall nicely in that gap. And that's really important to us because otherwise, yes, our rents would look too high. Someone said, well, I could do a build to rent. I said, well, that's all right then, but there's no one there to help you on those days that you want.
Yeah.
Plus, the endless teas, coffees, cakes, biscuits that our chef is just knocking out the whole time as well. They easily
and tell us about that. Like, so you have an F&B kind of section. Yeah. What, like, is that run by your own in-house staff? Yeah.
Yeah. So we have each neighborhood has a head chef and a sous chef and a kitchen assistant that reports into our ops team. It's a tricky one because it's really hard to make money in any restaurant.
Yeah.
I say that as if I know. I've never run a big restaurant, but read the news enough for that. So when we only have between sort of 50 and 80 people living with us, when we're 100% occupied, we're just over 40% use the restaurant most days. So it's hard to get that done. But we don't want to price our main courses at the same price as the gastropub down the road or the local Italian. Yeah. We want people to thrive and use it. But then on the other hand, I want people to be independent and give themselves a purpose every day. So that about 40% using the restaurant is spot on. If it was 100%, we wouldn't have room, but also be like, hey, come on, you can cut your own mac cheese. But for those that want to come down and eat our meals. So yeah, we have to price it carefully because probably maybe saying stuff I shouldn't be saying, but the restaurants don't really make money, and they wouldn't if someone looked at the prices of our main courses. Yeah. But we'd far rather that was full of chatter. So people that sit on the same table the whole time, whether they're a couple or friends in twos and threes, and then in each neighborhood as well, we'll have a table that varies in size depending on there, which is basically like it becomes the same groups of
community
8, 10, 12.
Table.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's great.
And even it's always the same people in the same spot, but it works
people
well.
that are kind of outgoing and they don't like the loneliness, and so they want to go down and have someone, and they'll bump into friends and things like that. Which is.
But did you think that worked for you though when you're looking at co-living? Like co-living works for introverts as much as it does for extroverts.
Yeah, see, the thing is, it's funny because a lot of people, they want their own space to a degree. Like you want to go in, you want to watch a movie, you can lie on your bed and look at it on your iPad or whatever. But then there's going to be times when you're bored. If there's a bar downstairs or something like that, that's great. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of a bar or a cafe or something where you can go down and just, you might bump into somebody and just have a bit of crack before you head on back to your room or head out or whatever.
And we see that. Hundreds of people in us. We see it all the time now of those that have come back to life. For those that listen to a lot of podcasts, they would have heard Anna tell a story before about that. There's a lady that lives in one of our neighborhoods who, when we then saw her, she's beautifully well presented, and she said before I moved in here, I hadn't been out for 2 years, and now I go out every day. Because every evening she gets dressed up and she comes down and has a drink in the bar with her friends, and to her, that's going out, and it is going out. So. It is wonderful. There was a lady I saw last week actually at Woodbank, which was our place in Woking, our neighbourhood in Woking, who used to play golf, I think still does or wants to go back to it, but since moving in has taken up bowls. And her agenda is packed from the moment she wakes up to the way she goes to bed, because you can be as social as you want to be.
Yeah. Tell us, in terms of the future, we were talking about the demographics and stuff, like what's the future hold for Birch Grove? Is it just continue to grow and grow and grow?
Yeah, we again, I'm name dropping again. Those who have heard on are hugely ambitious, and rightly so. We want to take Birch Grove everywhere in the UK. We'd love to have a Birch Grove in every town. The way that the business model works at the moment, and that costs of money and development costs, it's only really adding up. Literally, the economics will only really work that within the M25 at the moment, just outside. But we need more people to enter this market, and we actively, it means people saying, yeah, be a competitor, do it, help us bring the price down, spread out. Because again, the more people that know about it, hopefully people listen to this, go, oh right, this rental, it does make sense. So the more people that do it, the better it will be for everyone. And it will actually, weird thing to say, allow us to be more competitive, lower our pricing in the rentals, and open it up to more, so that we can have people moving in at your mum's age. At my mum's age, she's just turned 74, and she's, like your mum said, I'm not moving somewhere like that. I've worked here, take her for lunch a few of them. She's literally, she cannot wait. Oh, I'm taking her to look at one. Look at one. She's now got her eye on it, as in, I'm moving in. So that's in a couple of weeks. So we would love to be attracting people who are younger, in their 70s. We'd love to have places all over the UK. I would. I loved it when my jobs were travelling around the UK, doing nights here and there and opening up properties. I absolutely loved it. So that's what we want to do.
Brilliant. Well, Marcus, I'm watching the clock here. In terms of if somebody wanted to learn more about you or Birch Grove or something like that, what's the best way to do that?
I think LinkedIn's probably the way that most people go for. I don't have anything else on social media, so that'd be the only way to get. And Birch Grove, like everyone, we have a Birch Grove website, so birchgrove.life.
Okay, great.
But I said we are so proud of what we offer. We have hundreds of wonderful stories about how we genuinely are making a difference to people's lives, and every neighbourhood that I have, I would let anyone walk in, look at it. We have somewhere actually in Sidcup, the first one, so it's 100% occupied. So we have no empty apartment to show anyone. Brilliant. We actually have a ready list. So rather than a wait list, a ready list means if you're going to come and pay your joining fee when one comes available, you're coming in, because otherwise someone else will. So we have a beautiful lady there, Hazel. Her apartment has become the one that we show when investors come around, when anyone like that comes around, because we just feel so comfortable. And I wouldn't even go with them now. We just say, she's expecting you. This is her number. Knock on the door. And I feel so comfortable with that. So that would be one way that people could learn more about us.
Brilliant. Marcus, my final question, I like to ask my guests, looking, given the conversation we had today and all of the different sort of roles that you've held and stuff, if you had an opportunity to speak with your 18 to 20-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself today?
That's not the one I thought you were going to ask me, so that's good. I'll be more impulsive for that then. So it took me a while to work out the benefits of working hard as well as working smart. So I think I was quite impatient. It probably was like my sort of mid-20s when, I may have been getting up early and doing it, but I was probably finding an easy way to do stuff. So I think actually working hard as well as smart earlier would have certainly paid off. And the other one would be, and I probably have alluded to this, is actually to be a bit more patient.
Patience and discipline are the traits that I recommend people have in the property industry. Yeah,
absolutely. But in the same way, it worked out all right in the end. But there's certainly things that I would have done. But every decision I've made that I probably in hindsight went, that wasn't the wisest, seemed to work out right in the end. So it made it interesting.
Brilliant. Well, Marcus, thanks so much for your time today, and wishing you and your colleagues at Birch Grove the best of luck.
Yeah, thanks for your time, Gavin. Really interesting to talk to you.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Facade. If you enjoyed the show or found it in any way useful, could I please ask you to take a moment to leave a review over on iTunes or Spotify. This really helps us get the podcast out in front of more people. If you have any questions or topics you would like me to cover in future episodes, please connect with me via my brand new school community. You will find a link in the show notes. You can stay up to date with all of my content and the projects I'm working on by signing up for my weekly newsletter over on my website, gavinjgallagher.com. That's all for now. See you back here, same time next week.